relations are set to reach an entirely new level. And that is especially also because of dialogue with the business community, with many representatives present here today. We greatly value the dialogue and the participation from companies and from chambers of commerce, in particular, of course, the EU-MCCI here in Malaysia. And with that, let me congratulate the EU-MCCI for today's trade forum and with the fantastic publication that you bring out today once again, and wish you all a very productive day. Thank you.
Malaysia Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Ambassador Vincent Piket. More than that, I want to commend the EU-MCCI for actively undertaking knowledge-sharing events such as this. I have just come back from Brussels, where I was involved in the Malaysia-EU Free Trade Agreement negotiations, and I'm pleased to use this opportunity to share with you an update from my perspective. I know that Ambassador Vincent made reference to the negotiations. We have just completed the 7th round of negotiations. We have worked very hard over the last year to come to an agreement that will benefit businesses on both sides. There are still some real challenges which can only be resolved if both sides are committed to seeking common ground and looking for balance of benefits. So this is pretty much a work in progress. I address you this morning, ladies and gentlemen, also in the spirit of constructive engagement, of wanting to see how we can take the economic relations between the EU and Malaysia to a higher level. And what are the key issues that we need to address? There are external constraints to consider. Uncertainties abound about the strength of the global economic recovery, about how sustainable it will be. The last 8 months have been exceptionally turbulent for the global economy. The IMF's theme of its recently published World Economic Outlook says it all. Growth resuming, dangers remain. Global growth is projected to grow from 4% in 2011 to about 3.5% this year. The Eurozone is projected to go into mild recession, and both China and India are expected to record slower growth. Given Malaysia's export orientation, ongoing risks in the global recovery constitute risks for Malaysia's growth. The key issue here is how to leverage on our resources better to achieve real and sustained growth. Malaysia's own economy has demonstrated significant resilience. Our GDP grew at 5.1% last year, supported by domestic demand in the face of weak external support. We forecast that growth this year will be around 4.5 to 5%. Our LPI performance has also been encouraging, topping 32.9 billion last year, our best performance ever. On the trade front, our trade with the rest of the world last year reached a record of 1.3 trillion ringgit, and it was the 14th consecutive year that we registered a trade surplus. So where do we go from here? I would like to draw attention to a recent report by Credit Suisse. The report rightly points out that the transition from middle to high income is neither automatic nor easy. It provided examples of countries that slipped from middle income to low income, as well as those that would hardly make the transition. Factors like labor productivity, physical infrastructure, business-friendly environment, and human capital are key to making that transition. It concluded that China and Malaysia are the best positioned countries in the Asia-Pacific to progress towards developed market status over the next decade. All I can say is that we are well aware of these key success factors. There is going to be no let-up in our drive to achieve accelerated economic growth. We are now in the second year of our economic transformation program. In fact, in this context of the global economic situation, we must appreciate the timely implementation of the economic transformation program. It bears repeating that to date, 110 entry point projects have been launched, 55% of which have taken off, and over 313,000 jobs. The rollout of projects under the ETP will create many investment opportunities. Many of these will be in priority sectors such as oil and gas, renewable energy, green technology, healthcare, education, and tourism. I'm sure this provides potential for EU companies with or without the FTA. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say a few words about the prospects of the services sector. It is generally the case that as economies mature and become more sophisticated, the contribution of the services sector to GDP will grow and exceed that of manufacturing. This happened in Malaysia last year when the services sector contributed 58.6% to our GDP, overtaking manufacturing for the first time. Under the ETP, this contribution is expected to grow as much as 65% by 2020. To support the growth of the services sector, the government has taken measures to liberalize foreign equity participation in the sector. We have announced autonomous liberalization of about 44 services sectors in total. We expect that these will be in full implementation when the laws and regulations of some of these sectors are implemented before the end of the year. Ladies and gentlemen, to take on what David said about engagement and consultation and dialogue with government, at the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, we are well aware of the pressures that impact our business community. We know that the decisions we make in the global arena, whether in ASEAN, APEC, or the WTO, as well as in domestic policy formulation, will impact business. So we are conscious of the need to consult industry, research institutions, as well as experts in respective fields. In fact, public consultation and engagement is integral to our tasks at MITI. Our doors are always open and we welcome feedback. In addition, we have started a cross-fertilization program with some business associations, specifically MITI and FMM. Here we assign our MITI officers to these organizations for a short period, and likewise, these organizations assign their officers to us. And we have had very good feedback. We've started the pilot with MITI and FMM, and we've had very good feedback from the organization as well as from our officers. So we look to engaging the EU, MCCI in this as well. Ladies and gentlemen, a few words on ASEAN-EU relations. Our economic relations, as you know, hit a wall in 2009 when the ASEAN economic ministers and the EU Trade Commissioner agreed to halt the free trade agreement negotiations. Now, as a group, ASEAN continues to experience positive developments on both the economic and political fronts. As member states have made significant improvements in their trade, have made significant improvements in their trade and investment regimes through the ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement, the ASEAN Framework Agreement for Services, and the ASEAN Comprehensive Investment Agreement. Now, these are all progressive steps towards the realization of the ASEAN Economic Community by 2015. In the light of global economic challenges, ASEAN's work towards greater economic integration makes it increasingly attractive. In addition, the EU is also on its way towards lifting sanctions on Myanmar. ASEAN is thus a value proposition that you cannot ignore. Also, we are working towards greater regional economic integration, looking at ASEAN's integration with its dialogue partners, whether China, India, Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and we have a template that we're putting in place, and dialogue partners who are willing and able to engage us can sign on or engage us in the negotiations for wider economic integration. However, at the recent ASEAN-EU consultations in Phnom Penh, the EU appeared less inclined to engage in a region-to-region free trade agreement, preferring to engage instead, as Ambassador Vincent Piket has said, in bilateral FTAs with individual member states. Now, while it is the prerogative of the ministers to make that decision, the potential of a region-to-region FTA cannot be denied. Imagine that it would enrich the lives of over 1.3 billion citizens. But that's not all. Factor in the fact that ASEAN has signed free trade agreements with major economies such as China, India, Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, factor in also the fact that Malaysia itself has free trade agreements with quite a number of countries. Add all these up and your market reach will stretch to 3.1 billion people. And as they say, this is nothing to sneeze at. Ladies and gentlemen, as a person who prefers to see the glass half full, I know that the best is yet to come. When the AEC comes into, or the ASEAN Economic Community becomes a reality in 2015, Malaysia will be the gateway to a regional market of 600 million people with a sizable, growing middle class. Imagine what possibilities. On that positive note, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for giving me your time, and I thank EU-MCCI for inviting me.
Thank you very much. The trade and investment relations and services sector in the ASEAN Economic Community. Yes, Mr. Kerneis.
Very much. Good morning. David Jones, Sari from Manager Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much for the invitation. Retail, both through engineering, environmental, tourism, transport, obviously, etc. In my organization, I have a representative of European sector-specific organization of all these sectors, plus some confederation of general industry, like Business Europe, covering the whole Europe, and then some Business Europe members. These members are there because they have taken the decision politically to say, yes, services is important to us. Members, because we have also some companies which are there because it is giving us credibility and visibility, and we have the CEO as voice to our organization. GDP in services is big, we know that. It is always interesting to see what is the average. Malaysia, as we have heard today, is about 56.6% in 2011. So it is an important part of the economy. As I said, it is governing a very large part of all the different services that we're using every day. When we look at international trading services, for the EU it is important to understand what we are exactly talking about. The right column here is taking into consideration intra-EU trade and extra-EU trade. And if you look at the extra-EU trade, EU is by very far the biggest exporter of services in the world. But too often still in the world we hear about United States of America, Germany, UK, France, Malaysia, etc. If we want to talk about country by country, we have to take the first column. And that is really the big size of what we're talking about. Because there is going to be 42% of all international trading services is going to be coming from the European Union. And I think that has to be highlighted to understand that negotiating a trade agreement with the European Union without understanding the measure of the services industry and without understanding that a strong chapter on liberalizing services is of key interest in the European Union is going to miss the point. It is also showing up, interestingly, the importance of integration. The European single market does mean something. And 58% of all EU trade in services is among the 27 member states. And we hope that in the ASEAN Economic Council community, which is going to come up, this will also be a boost for the integration of the region into the services sectors. If we look at another important part of the services, it's about foreign direct investment. The European Union is by very far the biggest investor in the world. And we also there have to look at how it goes within the European Union and outside.